All right, here we go. The war summary for live stream 122. So that would be June 15th to the 21st, 1917. And I did make some footnotes, but I think I'm actually going to use those to insert in the live stream proper for some of the people that don't stick around for the after hours. Here we go. War summary. German forces are now withdrawing from the positions which they occupied after the Messines battle. To what extent this retirement will be made is, of course, not yet known, but apparently it is already considerable. Oh, darn it. Of course, you guys, if anybody has been sticking around, fresh off the off out of the oven is the ATA. So trying to remember what was read out about the Western Front and whatnot, and then put it in here. Anyways, correspondence at headquarters in France and dispatches last night say that it is extending farther southward. The attempts of some German military correspondents to belittle the British successes at Messines go by the board in the face of these reports. It is obvious that, having lost the Messines Ridge, the Germans, unless they could take it back, were bound to retire or run the chance of disaster. British cavalry again and infantry patrols are harassing the enemy, while the artillery is keeping up a steady bombardment of the new positions to which the enemy is retreating from time to time. It is stated in some of the dispatches that the ground over which the retirement is being made is marshy and liable to flood in wet weather, but that a long spell of fine weather has dried it up considerably, and there is nothing to prevent a comparatively rapid advance of the British. The extension of the British forward movement toward Lille and Douai will be considerably hastened by the German retreat, which is not likely to end until the Germans have crossed the east bank of the Lys River at a point around Warneton, south of Messines. The dispatches tell of considerable progress east of Ploegsteert, where the Canadians had many stern fights. It is, of course, impossible to say whether any considerable portion of the enemy will be brought to a stand before getting to prepared positions, at which such a stand could be made with a certain degree of safety. But the Germans are to be hustled in any event. Interesting way of putting it. They no longer have the initiative on this front, although when the first great retirement was in progress, it was constantly claimed in German reports that this was the real secret of the retrograde movement, which it is. Hindenburg, it was said, desired to obtain freedom of movement with the view to fighting decisive battles with the enemy. All the decisive battles so far have been launched and won by the British and the French. Oh my God, I've got to remember to find the date when the French mutinies have occurred, because there's not a peep going on right now about that. I can tell you that much. A lively engagement in the Arras sector to the south, in which the British carried hostile positions on a hill known as Infantry Hill, a point long fought for by both sides on a front of 3/4 of a mile, and captured 175 prisoners, is also recorded. General Maurice, in his review of West Front operations, rather deprecates the importance placed upon results of the explosion of 1 million pounds of high explosives preceding the attack at Messines. He states that it was certainly an aid in the attack, since it caused something like a panic among the Germans and permitted the British to get through the first lines more easily, but he is inclined to give the artillery and airmen greatest credit for paving the way to the success. He has toured the section since the attack and declared he found every dugout, every observation post, every trench, and every machine gun emplacement smashed by the artillery. This means, he says, very heavy German casualties. From the far east comes a dispatch stating that Fort Salif on the east shore of the Red Sea has been captured by British warships after a fight of 3 hours. A number of prisoners with machine guns and mountain guns were taken. The fort lies some 175 miles north of the Gulf of Aden, shown at the bottom of the map, seen elsewhere. Well, you're not going to see it here. And in southwestern Arabia, a force of Turks has for some time operated north of Aden and has more or less hampered British troops in that vicinity. It is not yet apparent whether the taking of the fortress presages an attempt to cut off the Turks in this sector only, or whether it has a larger meaning concerned with the recent successful revolt of the natives of Arabia against the Turks, and which was aided by the British and the plans of the latter for advancing in the Palestine area. Light railways have solved many transportation problems for the British in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Hold on. The news from other fronts shows that there's been lively skirmishing in the Vardar area in Macedonia and some attacks by the enemy. The result all in favor of the Allied forces, while French and British troops continue to occupy points in Greece. The Allies seem to be using a much larger force in the latter connection that was deemed possible some time ago, and this without weakening any of the forces engaged in other theaters. There's promise of big events in the campaign against the Bulgars and the Turks, particularly. On the Trentino front, the Italians report a violent attack by the Austrians on the positions recently taken from them. These attacks, the Italians say, were resisted and finally driven back with heavy losses to the enemy. In the Carso Plateau, there is fighting of only minor importance. There is some activity on the Russian front, but nothing as yet to warrant the belief that Russian advances are to be attempted on a large scale. Paris does not report any unusual incidents on the French fronts. Another Zeppelin has been destroyed, the L-43, being attacked in the North Sea by British naval forces and set on fire afterwards, breaking in two and falling into the sea. This is the 9th Zeppelin destroyed by the British, according to official reports, though unofficial but reliable tabulations put the number as high as 35. Ooh, that's a slight difference, I don't know about anybody else. 9 to 35, Jesus, Murphy. Once again, the Hindenburg Line in France figures in the dispatches, the British yesterday having captured portions of it northeast of Bellecour, overcoming sharp resistance on the part of the foe and inflicting heavy losses. News of this latest advance received last night followed upon the official report of a new advance made on Thursday evening in the Messines sector, an advance aided by German retirement over portions of the ground. The two advances made on rather widely separated sections of the British front with so short a time between each blow are further striking indications of the manner in which the initiative has passed to the Allies. The German forces are indeed on the defensive, and the fact that at many points they may violently counterattack will not alter the situation. The counterattack at Messines, which gained the Germans nothing but additions to their casualty lists, was an example of Prussian tactics. As a combination of a forlorn hope, attempted to regain important positions, and an attack because that is the correct thing to do, it was perfect. An advance from the Hindenburg Line positions, one, would take the British on the road to Cambrai. General Haig may be trying out the idea of oscillating attacks with a view to keeping the enemy mystified as to the point where the heaviest reinforcements will be required, or he may be almost prepared for an attack along the widest front over which a battle has yet been fought in the western area. You have no clue, dude. Passchendaele is coming. In any event, General Haig is wiping out many salients, straightening his line, and beating the enemy out of positions of his own choosing. I love that phrase, oscillating his positions. Well, what did they say? Where's that? Did I miss it again? As a combination of forlorn hope and intended regain position attack, maybe trying out the idea of oscillating attacks. Oh, that is so cool. In Belgium, the British campaign, already auspiciously opened, gives promise of developing. Sorry, that's Belgium, so that's where it is. I think, right? Shush, you don't know enough yet, Chris. Conjunction with the advance to the south into by far the most important of the war to date. That isn't, I guess maybe Passchendaele is in Belgium. I'll have to find this out. Cheaper's jumping. Well, it should if it's the third bottle of Ypres. For goodness sakes. Anyways, the Germans in their announcements of yesterday admit that they made not only a retirement, but add that they were pressed back by the British between Holbeke and the River Douve or something in southwest of Warneton. The retirement was due to the constant pressure of the British Second Army under direct command of General Plumer, which following the Messines Ridge battle pressed the foe into an impossible position, leaving them no alternative but that of fighting a losing battle with the waterways at their backs. The British attack was on a front of about 7 miles from the Klein Zillebeke south to the river Warnave. Now, doesn't that sound like a gaming situation there with with your counters at the back of a river where you're not allowed to retreat across a river? Anyways, it's just, I love this stuff. During the attack, the Germans lost 150 men, 1 howitzer gun, and a number of machine guns. The small loss of men indicates that the foe was fighting a rear guard action. The loss of the howitzer shows that he was hard pressed for time. Correspondents at British headquarters, while speaking cautiously of the situation, still hint that the retreat of the Germans will be continued for some distance, as there are no natural height positions for defense for some distance back. It is to be noted that if the British are able to maintain their advance in this sector, it will have a very direct and important effect on points farther south, where the struggle to eject the foe from northern France is in progress. Word that the French forces, hold on. Sorry, I'm just was drinking coffee. I'm trying to get it before it turns into iced coffee, which I can't stand. Word that the French forces are moving in conjunction with the new advances of the British will not be surprising whenever it comes. So it's not true. I did try some kind of like pumpkin spice maple thingamajig at Starbucks last October. It was actually half decent. They gave me like a little sampler or whatever. It may be assumed that the French are only waiting the right moment for them. Like it even had ice cubes in it. The right moment for a movement as planned by Generals Haig and Pétain. For the moment, there's no news of great importance from the French front. Our gallant allies are no doubt preparing to strike hard. The torpedoing of a British armored merchant cruiser in the North Sea illustrates the dangers of maintaining the blockade of Germany, which, while not spectacular, is a necessary work in bringing the Germans to the end of their resistance. Considering the amount of patrol work that the British ships have had to perform, the losses have not been heavy, and the Navy's grip on the enemy is tightening rather than loosening with pressing days. On a side note, from listening to Indian Idell's thing this week, saying that Admiral Jellicoe was saying that giving the go-ahead with Haig's little Passchendaele plea or whatever, saying that Britain may lose the war within a year if they don't freaking take the Belgian coast. I was like, what is going on? Because they're really scared to death about starving to death, it seems. Anyways, an amazing success of the United States Liberty Loan is reported in dispatches published today. It is a cheering war item. Remember what I said before. I'm not an historian. May sound like one, but I'm not. Anybody can sound like an historian. You just have to read this out. So fact check the living dickens out of everything I say. Cheering news. Excuse me. Hold on. Oh, maybe that was like a Freudian thing. Anyways, cheering news comes from Russia in the shape of dispatches stating that the Duma in secret session passed a resolution for an immediate offensive in close cooperation with the Allies on the ground that such a course is essential for the safety and future of Russia, and that any other action would be ignoble treason toward the Allies. The workmen's and soldiers' delegates also went on record as irrevocably opposed to a separate peace. These decisions follow upon several recent dispatches to the effect that there's more or less activity on the Russian fronts, and although this activity is not developing at any great extent, there is some hope that, in spite of the disintegration of the Russian forces in several areas, a shrewd blow may yet be struck against the Teuton forces. If this should be done while the British, French, and Italians are hammering away at the enemy, there will be hope of a quicker ending of the war than is now in sight. Another Zeppelin has fallen to a British aviator. The big gas bags. Gosh, I gotta love that. Of little terror now for any. Wait until this, though. Read this and then wait till you see the next paragraph. That's all I got to say. Another Zeppelin has fallen to a British aviator. The big gas bags of little terror now for any of the countries they are sent against. Oh, yeah? We'll find out in a minute. On Saturday night, 2 airships visited the east coast of England. One of them dropping, oh, yeah, that's right, this quick. One of them dropping 6 bombs on town, killing 2 people, injuring 16, and damaging a large number of houses. This Zeppelin apparently escaped uninjured. Not bad for something that has little terror now. Its comparison was driven off by the fire of the anti-aircraft guns, and it is thought was injured by them. It was attacked later by a pilot of the Royal Flying Corps, who succeeded in setting it on fire. The airship fell to the ground and was completely destroyed. There will be intense satisfaction in the Allied countries over this punishment of the baby killers, and still moreover, the added proof of the uselessness of the Zeppelin as a military weapon. The fact that it is still vulnerable to attack by aviators, in spite of the boasted improvements, shows that offensive measures of the Allies are keeping ahead of the Zeppelin factories. And unless they mean Zeppelin factories and like modifying those Zeppelins, perhaps, but there's no more Zeppelins being made, remember. We found that out a few months ago. On the Trentino, they're now putting all their eggs in the airplane basket. On the Trentino front, Italian forces seem to be still making a fair amount of progress, having captured Cornocavento, a strongly fortified mountain position in the eastern sector of the Trentino with several heavy guns. The pressure of Cadorna's troops in this region would seemingly indicate the determination to push the campaign here on a larger scale, than was at first thought possible. Carried to a decisive conclusion, a campaign in this direction would strike a blow at the very heart of Austria, and there is some speculation as to whether Cadorna is going to try such a campaign, while at the same time holding positions already gained on the Carso, or even pressing his advance there also, with Trieste in view. The Italian army must be very strong indeed to conduct two such campaigns under amazingly difficult conditions and on fronts very far apart, which I did not know they were doing. That's pretty impressive. It is, don't you think? The Italians are certainly doing their bit. And if the Russians come in, an amazing change may soon come over the situation on the whole of the fighting fronts. On another side note, remember, we found out a few months ago that Falkenhayn was thinking, boy, maybe we should actually, guys, be helping out the Austrians and trying to knock out the Italians this way. This will help it out. And ironically, I just found out that there's some, I don't know who it was, but some people were saying maybe we should send 12 British divisions from the Western Front to help out the Italians at around the same. Pretty cool. From the Western Front, there's no news of great importance. The British have repelled attacks on the ground gained in the Ypres-Comines area and have advanced a little, while in the Bullecourt sector there is some fighting, which is mentioned in the ATA. The Germans, of course, make the usual claim of repulsing every attack. European and British views incline to the belief that Hindenburg contemplates, if he is not already underway, another big retreat similar to that which was the cause of much boasting by the Germans some months ago. Obviously, General Haig is determined to take a full advantage of any signs of such a retreat, providing that the weather conditions remain such as to permit of steady and continuous pressure, and you can get your supply lines up. A notable paragraph in the British report is the statement that Portuguese troops, repulsed several raids. It is not known how strong the Portuguese contingent with the West Front armies is, but it is an indication that Portugal is no safety-first ally. The French report a fierce attack near Hurtebis in the Champagne, in which the Germans took some portions of their trenches, most of which were recovered by Petain's men. A battle near Ferryman's House again on the Belgian front resulted in the Germans being twice repulsed. Activity here may indicate an attempt of the Germans to create a diversion to help their forces elsewhere. Interesting. I'm wondering if they are trying to, is he alluding to some other ally that's a safety first ally? I wonder who that would be. Maybe there's not. Maybe he's just making a statement. Hold on, let me sip some coffee. Captain Bathurst, Parliamentary Secretary of the British Food Control Department, warned the people of Britain in the course of his speech that there has been no diminution in the activity of the German U-boats. The June losses, he says, may exceed those of May, as the Germans are apparently concentrated their attention upon the larger ships. In the last 10 days, he says, 40,000 tons of sugar have been sent to the bottom. He urges that production must be increased and that there must be proper conservation of foodstuffs. It is fortunate indeed, you're darn right, that the United States is beginning to be able to place a number of ships at the disposal of the Allies. And we found some even Germans, former German ships that were impounded. These no doubt will be used largely for the convoying of food, and not interesting to use that word, isn't it? And will, with the assistance of the American mosquito fleets, be much better protected in voyages to and from the Allied ports than has been the case previously, owing to the immense amount of patrol duties devolving upon the Allied fleets. Italian troops have landed at Port Said, according to a statement from Washington. Holy Moses, look where the hell they are now, to assist the Allied armies operating in Palestine. This action, it is said, follows recent conferences of the British, Italian, and French premiers and is Italy's return for the aid given her on the Austrian front. Mind you, they already have some presence near below, oh, darn it, the thing that half the Ottomans and half the Greeks keep fighting over all the time. I keep forgetting the name of it. Cyprus. So far as the official records show, only British forces have heretofore operated against the Turks in Palestine, and with excellent results. No word of fighting or advances has been recorded for some time, but the British operations in and from Egypt have never been advertised until some objective has been obtained. Light railways have solved many of the problems of desert transportation for men and materials, and presumably these are now keeping the British in Palestine well supplied. A Turkish report published some time ago was to the effect that a decision not to defend Jerusalem had been revoked in favor of a plan to hold it to the last, which was verified, I think, last week or the week before by William Aarons's ATAs. The strength of the Italian force landed is not mentioned, but it is said that it consists of Bersaglieri and Carabiners, noted corps, which in the past have had much experience in fighting the Turks in Tripoli. British naval units are cooperating effectively in the campaign, and French units may be assisting. When the Allies are ready for the next move from their positions near Gaza, the probabilities are that they will strike a decisive blow at the Turks in Palestine. Britain is also to make reprisals for, I love this because it goes in keeping with Charles Latour asking a zillion questions about the British. Didn't the British have countermeasures against the air raids? Remember, there's two biggies, one per week. And, where were the Germans flying from, and so on and so forth. And part of this, we start talking about the reprisals because the Germans are doing civilian targets. Did the British and French do civilian targets? We asked that last week. But anyways, Britain is to make reprisals for the German air raid, which resulted in the killing of so many children and women a few days ago. Mr. Bonar-Law made a statement to the effect in the Commons, adding that the government intended to take steps not only for damaging the enemy, but for preventing raids on Britain. He's the Conservative leader, I do believe. Raids on German towns and cities at considerable distance from the Allied lines are becoming more practicable every day with the increasing strength of the Allied air forces and the increasing efficiency of the airplanes. In recent battles on the Western Front, the Germans have resorted to using big squadrons of airplanes because they are no longer a match individually for British aviators. We're going to talk about that in a second. The British have met the challenge, and pitched battles are now taking place between large squadrons. In nearly every instance, these fights are well over the German lines, as the foe will not go far from his own bailiwick to seek the enemy. After one of the latest of these combats, British airmen coolly flew over the battle area at a low altitude and counted 10 smashed German planes lying on the ground. Supremacy in the air is becoming more and more vital to the winning of the war, and a decision of the United States to spend millions of money in training and up to 30,000 aviators means much for the Allies. You're darn right it does. But remember, we mentioned this a few weeks ago, that the German tactics or strategy on the Western Front with their airplanes is that the main strategy is they wait for the British to go over their lines, find reconnaissance, like count the amount of planes, and then just send more up than there are British planes. So that's what they're doing. Essentially, they're using the resources. They don't have as much resources to go over British lines as much as in the other way around. Anyways, there we go. On the West Front, no major actions are recorded. French troops in the Champagne district, by a surprise attack, carried some 300 yards of a trench system that had formed a salient in their line, capturing a few prisoners. A German report from this sector speaks of increased artillery fire over a widening area, makes no mention of the French claim of success. Both sides seem to be sparring for an opening here, and news of a big battle would not be surprising. The British report records the retirement of advanced posts east of Monchy-le-Preux, a few miles below the Scarpe River, taken by the British on June 14th. These positions were in the nature of posts established in front of the new main line of the British on the date mentioned. The loss of the positions need not be taken seriously. It bears out, however, the repeated statements of the war critics that the Germans would continue to make desperate counterattacks in their attempts to hold back the British advance. Slight gain was made by the British in the Messines sector in the direction of Warneton. The German U-boat told the British merchant ships up to yesterday is 322 vessels of more than 1,600 tons and 135 of less than 1,600 tons, with 78 fishing vessels, according to an Associated Press statement from New York, based on British official reports, allowing an average of 5,000 tons per 4 vessels of more than 1,600 tons destroyed, and computing the average of the smaller ships at 1,000 tons. The table figures out that the Allies' total loss in slightly less than 4 months would average an aggregate of 1,745,000 tons. This is very heavy, of course, but it is considerably below the 1 million tons a month, which the Germans figured was necessary to be destroyed in order to bring Britain to her knees. The announcement that a Japanese vessel had sunk a U-boat in the Mediterranean is another proof of the increasing liveliness in dealing with this peril, and certainly not a safety-first ally. On the Carso, the Italians have recaptured some of the ground lost by the great Austrian counterattacks near the coastline and hold it firmly with a view to resuming the smash towards Trieste when the proper time arrives. Cadorna's men have also repulsed heavy attacks in the Trentino sector. Hold your horses. All right, here we go, and more stuff about the subs and food. The submarine is still a serious menace to Britain's food. According to the weekly summary given out last night, 27 ships of over 1,600 tons and 5 ships under 1,600 tons were sent to the bottom within the past 7 days. These figures show a heavier toll exacted by the German plungers than in any of the 6 preceding weeks. The greatest destruction to shipping since the middle of April was during the week ending of April 28th, when 38 ships of over 1,600 tons and 13 of less than 1,600 tons were torpedoed. Admiralty officials point out, in seeking some cause for hope in the present situation, that an increasing number of vessels are successfully resisting attack. On the other hand, the increasing number of vessels of large tonnage being sunk constitutes considerable cause for alarm. Again, the Admiralty officials announced that the weapons being used to combat the submarines have constantly grown in efficiency. And it is intimated that, though British cargo carriers are being sent to the bottom with painful regularity, too much pessimism is not reasonable. Critics of the Admiralty point out that there is too much passive resistance in the anti-submarine policy, and that instead of spasmodic raids both by sea and by land on submarine bases on the Belgian coast, there should be pursued a more vigorous and constant assault upon the lairs of the sea wolves. I didn't know if they were called that yet. They contend that these can be more surely destroyed in the shallow waters of the Belgian coast than in the open seas. A Paris dispatch states that a special submarine department, I'd love to find out if there really was one, has been created at the French Ministry of Marine by President Poincaré. A nest of German trenches at the foot of Reservoir Hill was captured by the Canadians in a smart engagement yesterday. The Germans made 3 separate attempts to recapture the lost ground, but all these were futile. 35 prisoners were taken, the dugouts were blown up, and the new positions have been incorporated in the British lines. This latest success of the Canadians removes another obstacle from before Lens. British troops farther south have retaken the posts east of Monchy-le-Preux, from which advanced detachments were forced to retire when the enemy attacked Infantry Hill on Monday. 3 heavy Teuton counterattacks against the British positions immediately north of the Souchez River were completely repulsed. Slight gains were made by the British, too, south of the Cojeul River and north of the Souchez River. Is it Cojeul River? It'll be interesting to know. Brian R. Smith, where are you if you're still around? For German field guns were taken east of Messines last Thursday, or I can go look it up myself. General Haig, in a review of operations in northern France. I wonder if I could do it now. Let's do it, because I can pause and you guys won't. It's not, you get it. Well, the lady says it's Cojeul or something like that. So there we go. General Haig, in a review of operations in northern France from December 18th to the present offensive, makes clear 2 or 3 notable facts. One of these is that the campaign following the Somme battle and begun against the villages of Pisse and Grandcourt on November 18th has been uninterrupted by any German enterprise. The British commander-in-chief shows that he had a clearly defined plan last summer and that he has been executing it ever since with astonishing success against the heaviest resistance that Hindenburg could offer. He lays stress upon the difficulties of transportation and gives his readers a hint of what tremendous achievements have been won by the engineers from Britain and Canada, which I want to do a little telegram from time from. I've got it off to the side. Maintenance of communications was one of the most serious impediments to progress this spring, and he himself expresses wonder at the manner in which his men were able to keep in contact with an ingenious retreating foe. General Haig makes this remark: the prospect of a more general resumption of open fighting can be regarded with great confidence. The Italians have resumed their offensive on the Trentino front and have captured Austrian positions on Monte Altigara together with nearly 1,000 prisoners. The chief objective of the drive is the city of Trent, which was once almost within their grasp. Dispatches from time to time state that the Italians have greatly increased their striking power in this area. and there can be little doubt that under fairly favorable conditions, this northern goal will soon be attained. I wonder if I should call it that instead. Dispatches from time to time instead of telegram from time. Because I really do it from time to time. Interesting. Hindenburg continues his efforts to dislodge the French from the commanding positions in the Champagne. Yesterday, the Germans launched an attack on a front of nearly a mile between the Ayat River and Moulin de la Faux. The French report states that the assault was very violent and was carried out with large effectiveness. No material success was gained by the foe. Operations in German East Africa have been resumed by the British. Aided by warships, a surprise landing was effected near Mureka in the estuary, and the Germans were driven towards the southwest. The British struck from the port of Lindy. The lull before the storm, hold on, nears the latter. General Haig's troops, keeping in close and continual contact with Hindenburg's advanced position and exploring it in occasional raids, are in complete readiness for another extensive German withdrawal, which is considered to be highly probable in the region between Arras and Ypres, or for what is even more likely, a new British push. Mr. Atkins is still Lord of the Air over northern France, and this fact, repeatedly demonstrated, makes the expectation of another and early blow similar to that struck at Vimy and Messines ridges fully warranted. The German troops in the Messines region stand between the British and the Ypres-de-Command Canal. With their backs to the latter and deprived of any safe observation or artillery positions, a retirement to the other side of the canal seems to be the only feasible solution of a problem that must cause the German High Command considerable concern. Austrian Poles, so long oppressed, have overthrown the government. Dispatches from Vienna through different channels indicate that the cabinet crisis, precipitated by a refusal of the Polish representatives to approve the budget, has culminated in the resignation of all its members. Even the German papers are credited with treating the situation as a serious menace, and it is not at all unlikely that the leavens supplied by the provoked Poles will create a cumulative trouble for the Kaiser's first ally. A Polish deputy declared in the Vienna Reichsrat that over 30,000 Poles have been hanged by order of the German authorities. Following another description of the Teutonic barbarism, a pan-Germanist deputy said that the government had not used the rope enough. This brought a vehement protest from the Slav and Polish members, and the consequent uproar forced the suspension of the House. As the Polish population of Austria is estimated roughly at 5 million, the military as well as the political possibilities of the disruption of Parliament may be serious. In fact, it may spell the end of the apparent harmony in Vienna, which has made effective war operations in the Italian and Russian fronts. Yep, these war summaries are getting shorter. They are getting censored, really, as far as at least I think so anyways. General Neville, remember him? Still pursues his policy of attrition. Really? I thought he was fired. The French troops, without its Pétain's people now, the French troops occupying the positions of great natural advantage in the Champagne region are quite content for the present to allow the nervous Germans to do the attacking. The French War Office reports a heavy attack on Monday night between Mont Blanc and Mont Calnile. The assault broke up under the fire of French guns, which inflicted serious losses on the Germans, who left a number of prisoners in the hands of the French. Tuesday's German report admits that the penetration by the French of positions in the Champagne the day previous. Lord Ronda, in assuming the duties of Britain's food controller, declared yesterday that food power is co-equal with manpower. The problem of Great Britain's food primarily depends upon the supply, and in the main, the solution of the problem of supply lies in America. I'm sure they will not let us down. Only minor operations are reported on the Italian front. General Cadorna admits that the enemy penetrated advanced posts on the southeastern slopes of Mount Rombon. A surprise Austrian attack northeast of Gemignano on the Carso front was repulsed with severe losses. And the final one, a British official statement says that with the advent of the malarial season, the troops east of the Struma River have been slightly withdrawn. It is a precautionary measure that, according to the report, does no injury to their military position. But it doesn't help them either, does it? The ground evacuated is fully under control of the new line. All right, and that's it. And malaria, I guess. Anyways, that's it. Hope you have hope that went well. Hope you have a great remainder of your weekend and a great week. And that's it. Hope to see you for 1, 2, 3. All right. See you later.